What happens when a person who was always there for you, who absorbed all your pain, listened without judgment, and calmed every storm, suddenly disappears without a word? Not with anger, not with a fight, just silence. This isn't the end of a relationship. It's the beginning of the most brutal reckoning. Because when an empath decides on a quiet exit, they aren't punishing you. They are forcing you to face the one person you've been avoiding all along, yourself. The empath's quiet exit is the most devastating act of self-preservation. It isn't screaming, confrontation, or dramatic scenes. It's something far more powerful: complete withdrawal. When someone who gave everything simply disappears into silence, they force others to confront a truth they've been avoiding. They were never loving you. They were using you. This dynamic is rooted in Jungian psychology. Carl Jung understood that highly sensitive individuals, what we now call empaths, have a heightened capacity for perception. He described them as natural repositories for others' unconscious material. They unconsciously carry the emotional burdens others can't face, developing what Jung called a porous ego boundary. This makes them exceptionally good at feeling what others feel, but terrible at distinguishing between their own emotions and absorbed ones. This leads to what can be called the helper's dilemma. The more you help others avoid their psychological work, the more dependent they become. You cease to be a person to them and become a function, an emotional container. These relationships operate on an unconscious contract of codependence, where the sensitive person carries the emotional weight in exchange for conditional acceptance. The path to psychological sovereignty. Jung emphasized that true individuation, becoming your authentic self, requires the courage to be displeasing. For empaths, this courage feels like betrayal because their identity is built around being helpful and emotionally available. The quiet exit is the final stage of this process, marked by several key transformations. 1. The moment of psychological clarity. This isn't a dramatic event. It's a quiet awakening, often triggered by a small incident, that illuminates the entire dynamic. You realize your presence has been reduced to a function, not valued as a person. Jung wrote, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." For empaths, this awakening is painful because it reveals how much they've sacrificed. You see that your kindness has been interpreted as weakness, and your empathy as availability. Most shocking of all, you realize many people don't know who you are beneath your role as their emotional support system. This is the first step towards psychological independence. 2. The great reorientation. Once clarity occurs, your energy begins to flow inward, not outward. This is a conscious redirection of psychological resources. You stop automatically saying yes. You pause before absorbing others' emotional states. Most importantly, you start asking yourself questions you've never asked before. What do I actually want? Who am I when I'm not taking care of everyone else? This process can feel selfish, as you've been conditioned to believe your worth comes from your usefulness. Jung would call this the discomfort of authenticity, as being real feels foreign after years of being what others needed you to be. 3. The vacuum effect. This is where the power of the quiet exit becomes apparent. When you stop over-functioning, the space you once filled with emotional labor suddenly becomes a glaring void. You stop initiating conversations, rushing to smooth conflicts, or providing emotional maintenance. Jung called this the withdrawal of participation mystique, where you no longer unconsciously merge with others' psychological states. The psychological impact on others is profound. They suddenly realize how much they depended on your invisible labor. To them, your absence feels like abandonment because they never learned to meet their own emotional needs. Psychological accountability. Your withdrawal forces others into psychological accountability. Without your emotional cushioning, they face the full impact of their own behavior. They experience the consequences of taking without giving, of demanding without appreciating, and of using without valuing. Their response may be anger, a projection of their own shadow, as Jung would suggest, or they might attempt hoovering, suddenly showering you with attention. Jung warned that this is about regaining control, not expressing genuine appreciation. A rare few may use this experience as an opportunity for their own individuation. The mirror effect. Your quiet exit isn't an act of revenge, it's a revelation. It creates a mirror that forces others to see themselves clearly, often for the first time. Without your emotional buffering, they experience the full weight of their own psychological patterns. Some will never understand what happened, creating stories about how you changed. Others may experience a breakdown that forces them to develop healthier coping mechanisms. A rare few will use this as an opportunity for genuine transformation. Jung discovered something profound about why this is so devastating. It's not just the loss of support. It's the confrontation with what he called the unlived life. Your presence was preventing their psychological development. Jung wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." Your quiet exit forces them to finally develop their own roots instead of depending on yours. Ultimately, your sensitivity is not a weakness. It's a strength when properly directed. The quiet exit isn't about punishing others. It's about protecting yourself long enough to become who you truly are. You cannot become whole while fragments of yourself are scattered among people who don't value what they've been given. Your withdrawal isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Your silence isn't punishment, it's protection. Your boundaries aren't walls. They're the foundation for authentic connection. If you've reached the point where you choose peace over people-pleasing, you've taken the first step toward becoming a sovereign sensitive, a person who can love without losing themselves, help without depleting themselves, and care without carrying others' burdens.